This Victorian-era Italianate mansion in Nashville, Tennessee, exists because of the resilience and strength of one woman, Adelicia Acklen. At the time, she was the richest woman in Tennessee, and she did what was necessary to protect what was hers, including making her second husband sign a prenuptial agreement, so everything she built here would remain hers. Through Belmont Mansion, she created a little slice of Europe right here in the South, a home that also proved to be resilient, surviving the occupation of Union soldiers when they turned this house into their headquarters during the Civil War, and yet the mansion and its interiors remained intact. 3 husbands, 6 children lost, and through all that heartache, Adelicia remained an unstoppable force, pouring her time, money, and energy into Nashville, supporting orphans, helping working women, and investing in the city's rebuilding after the war. Today, I'm taking you inside Belmont Mansion, walking through each space, sharing its history, and learning about the woman whose legacy left such a lasting impression on the city of Nashville. Hi, I'm Allie, and welcome back to Fab Little Dish, where we celebrate historic interiors and the stories that keep these places alive. If you love historic house tours, give this video a thumbs up and subscribe for new adventures each and every week. Now, let's head to Nashville, Tennessee together. Adelicia Acklen was born on March 15th, 1817, to Oliver and Sarah Hightower Hayes. Her mother's family, the Hightowers, were early settlers in Tennessee. Adelicia graduated at just 16 years old, and she was engaged right out of school, but then her fiancé died. So she remained single until she was 22, when she married her first husband. Isaac Franklin served in the War of 1812, and at age 18, he entered the world of the slave trading business, which would grow into one of the largest operations in the South. He retired from that business in 1835, but by then he was already an extremely wealthy man, a wealth that was entirely built off the labor of the enslaved. After retiring, Franklin focused on plantation life, and that wealth was also built through forced labor of hundreds of enslaved people. He owned 6 cotton plantations in West Feliciana Parish, Louisiana, about 8,700 acres, along with Fairview, a 2,000-acre plantation near Gallatin, Tennessee, where tobacco, cattle, and horses were raised. It was around this time when he married Adelicia. He was 50, she was 22, a union with a 28-year age difference. They were married for 7 years and had 4 children before he died of a stomach ailment in 1846. Leaving her an estate worth around $1 million, an astonishing amount at the time, making her the wealthiest woman in Tennessee after his death. The inheritance also included 50,000 acres across 3 states, monetary investments, and 750 enslaved people. Although they had 4 children during their marriage, unfortunately, only one would survive, and their oldest surviving child, Emma Franklin, was the only Franklin child to ever live at Belmont Mansion, but even her life was cut short. A few years later, Adelicia met her second husband, Joseph Acklen. Joseph served as a U.S. attorney, and he also ran a law practice with his brother. While visiting Nashville in April 1847, Joseph attended a ball given by Mr. and Mrs. John Bell, and that's where he met the recently widowed Adelicia Franklin. 2 years later, Joseph resigned from his position as U.S. attorney and moved to Nashville to marry Adelicia. And here's something that's going to give you a little indication of Adelicia's personality. One day before their marriage, she asked Joseph to sign a prenuptial agreement, stating that she would retain ownership and control of all of the property she brought into the marriage. This was an incredibly bold move for a woman to do at the time. He agreed, and they were married. Together they had 6 children, but only 4 would survive into adulthood: Joseph Jr., William, Claude, and Pauline. They also had twin daughters, Laura and Corinne, born a half hour apart from one another, but both tragically died of scarlet fever at just 3 years old. She had a total of 10 children, with only 5 surviving right now. Belmont Mansion was built using Alicia's inheritance from her first marriage, wealth that came directly from the profits of slavery. Soon after their marriage, Adelicia and Joseph began constructing the estate in 1850. Belmont Mansion was built in 1853 as their summer home, the centerpiece of their 177-acre estate, back when this area was still all countryside outside of Nashville. And in 1860, Architect Adolphus Hyman expanded the house to 36 rooms, including a nearby T-shaped guest house, an entire art gallery, and even a bowling alley. During the rest of the year, the family lived mostly on Adelicia's plantations in Louisiana. By the time it was complete, the Italian villa-style mansion included 36 rooms and was around 20,000 square feet, making it the largest home built in Tennessee prior to the Civil War. The estate surrounding the mansion included a water tower to irrigate the gardens, a 200-foot-long greenhouse and conservatory, an art gallery, gazebos, a bowling alley, a bathhouse, and a zoo. Belmont became a showpiece of Nashville and was open to the public as a private park at the time. Then, the Civil War came to Nashville. The city fell to Union troops in early 1862 and remained occupied through the end of the war. And in 1864, the Confederates made one last effort to retake Nashville through the Battle of Franklin, which then led into the decisive Battle of Nashville on December 15th and 16th of 1864, which effectively ended the Civil War in the Western Theater. Belmont Mansion became the scene for preparations for that battle. It served as the headquarters for the 4th Corps of the U.S. Army of the Cumberland, and General Thomas J. Wood occupied Belmont for 2 weeks prior to that battle. But remarkably, only the grounds where 13,000 Union troops spent those first 2 weeks of December 1864 actually suffered damage. Belmont Mansion, the exterior and all of the interiors, remained untouched. Even they respected the beauty that was within Belmont. During the Union occupation, her husband Joseph went to Louisiana to manage their plantations, while Adelicia remained tied to Belmont, refusing to let others take it away from her. By August of 1863, Joseph became very ill, so much so that he was barely able to write. In a dictated letter to Adelicia sent on August 20th, he said that the South had no chance of winning the war. He believed that slavery was finished, and he said he was glad of it. Shortly on September 11th, 1863, at the age of 47, Joseph died from malaria in Louisiana. The creation and maintenance of Belmont's grounds was made possible purely through the forced labor of enslaved people, along with the work of paid immigrants. After the Civil War, a few formerly enslaved workers stayed on as paid staff, while many others left for new opportunities in Nashville and beyond. In 1867, Adelicia married for the third and final time, this time to a Nashville physician, Dr. William Archer Cheatham. With that marriage, she also became stepmother to his 2 children from his first marriage, Mary Cheatham, who passed away during the Civil War. Mattie Cheatham was a teenager when she came to live at Belmont. She later married here and went on to build a family of her own. And there was also Richard Cheatham, who was almost 12 when his father married Adelicia. He grew up on Belmont and then graduated from the University of Nashville. He eventually studied medicine and practiced as a doctor alongside his father. And while Adelicia's personal life kept evolving, one thing that never stopped was the impact that she left on Nashville. Her charity work in the city ramps up right before and during the Civil War, and the reach of her generosity is truly impressive. She put money behind Nashville's early growth, including a $2,000 investment in the Maxwell House Hotel, a project meant to elevate the city's reputation and bring in new people. She took on leadership roles supporting soldiers and families impacted by the war, and she worked directly with relief efforts, helping refugees and assisting Union women arriving in Nashville searching for their husbands and sons. After the war, she supported rebuilding through major city bond purchases, and she had a deep commitment to children, donating to orphanages and spending years helping to raise money for them. And later, she also served with organizations that supported working women, single women supporting themselves and their children who didn't have family money to lean back on. Then, in the final chapter of her life, Adelicia left Nashville in late 1884. She spent time in Florida and eventually moved to Washington, D.C., where she lived with some of her children until her death in May of 1887. And just before she died, Adelicia sold Belmont to a land development company. 3 years later, Ida Hood and Susan Herron purchased the house and 13 acres. It first became a girls' academy, and then the first building of what would eventually become Belmont University. This is the Grand Salon. It looks and feels like a little slice of Europe sitting right here in the middle of Nashville. And that's because the decor was completely inspired by Adelicia's grand tour of Europe following the Civil War, which significantly influenced the style and decor throughout this home. This was the welcome room of the house, where guests were received and where first impressions were made. Lavish parties were held here, dances. This space was meant for entertaining and to be shown off. The Grand Salon was added in 1859, and at that time, it was designed to be one of the most elaborately decorated rooms in any home in Tennessee. And it's all in the details here. The painted floors and the walls are made to look like real marble. There's layers of ornate trim throughout, these beautiful windows that when the light hits, pours different colors into the space. And the gilded touches throughout here truly make this feel like a palace in Europe, which all blends perfectly with the Italianate style of the home itself. The winged statue in the middle of the room was purchased by Adelicia in 1866 from New York, and it's called the Peri. It represents a fallen angel longing to return to heaven. The deep red glass is Venetian glass. Gold oxide was mixed into the glass to create this rich color, and when the light hits it, it completely changes the mood of the entire room. And this is a portrait of Adelicia with her horse, which was painted in 1845. It shows her as confident, in control, almost like she was fully aware that she was about to build something in Nashville that the city had never seen before. This is the family dining room. This is actually my second time touring Belmont Mansion, and on my most recent visit, this room was staged to reflect its Civil War occupation, so I'm sharing photos also from my initial visit, when it looked more like the family dining space that it was meant to be. Every morning when the family sat to eat breakfast in here, Adelicia asked her children to recite a fact that they had learned from the previous day before their meal was served. And I love that daily ritual. It gives us a little real snapshot of the family who once lived here. The sideboard here is original to the Franklin family. The portraits in here are also original, Oliver Hayes and Sarah Hightower, hanging on the wall here. There's also a portrait of Isaac Franklin, her second husband, hanging above the doorway to the service pantry. And this is the service pantry. This room right next to the family dining room was the working zone. Cooked food would come in and it would be plated onto the china here before it hit the table. And then after that meal, everything came right back through here again. Dishes would be washed, everything would be reset and cleaned and carried back to the butler's pantry for safekeeping. This is one of those behind-the-scenes spaces that makes the whole house feel a little more real, because you can picture the actual rhythm of what working life must have been like around here. And now we're in the library, which contains over a dozen original volumes of books on subjects including music, horticulture, history, and religion, as well as a bunch of different family photo albums. After Adelicia died in 1887, her 4 surviving children divided her estate. They kept what they wanted, and then they held an estate auction. And those auction records, along with what the family inherited, are a big reason that the museum staff was able to track down and recover a lot of the original Belmont pieces over time. The family owned a copy of the last portrait painted of President Andrew Jackson. Adelicia later gave it to Tennessee Governor James D. Porter, so the one we see here today is a reproduction. But this is where it was hung. And again, we see here evidence of when the Union soldiers occupied Belmont, which gives us a little glimpse into how things might have seemed in disarray as they were all here living under this roof. This is a small study, and even though it's called a study, this would have functioned more like a family sitting room. It's intimate, tucked away, and it feels like the kind of space where the real family life actually occurred. And you can't help but notice the clothing and items scattered around the room here. This space was staged this way to show the kind of disorder that took over the estate when Belmont was used as Union headquarters during the Civil War. I'm sure Adelicia was not thrilled to see her home in such a messy state when it was supposed to be her little slice of Europe. This is the billiards room, and it's a fun reminder that Belmont wasn't only about showing off and entertaining. This is where the house feels a little less stuffy and more laid back. I love the built-in wall shelves here. They make the room feel tailored, where everything has its own place, even the pool cues. And the game that they're describing on the sign here is 3-ball carom. It's played with 3 balls, 2 white and 1 red, and instead of sinking balls into pockets, as we normally would when we play pool today, the goal is to score by making caroms, meaning your cue ball hits the other balls in a single shot. There are also set spots on the table where the balls start, and the opening shot begins from an area that's marked with a semicircle, and if you miss, that can actually count as a point for the other player. So it's kind of a game where you can't get sloppy and you have to be very careful. And this is the winter parlor. Belmont was originally built as a summer house, but once the family started living here year-round during the Civil War, a big open mansion like this would have been freezing during the winters. Since this room was smaller, it held heat much better, especially with the way the warm afternoon light hits this space. And when the doors are closed with the fireplace on, it would have felt incredibly warm and cozy compared to the larger and grander rooms throughout the rest of the home. And most of the furniture in here, the chairs, the sofa, and the center table, are all original. Because of this, you can actually picture this space being active and alive during those cooler and harsher months. And this is the central parlor. And before the grand salon was added, this was the main entertaining room at Belmont. It was here where the family would have hosted, gathered, and socialized. The whole space was designed to make you feel like you've been lifted again right into Europe. There's hints of European influences throughout. We have an English carpet here, French wallpaper, and even the painted sky ceiling is supposed to remind you of an open Roman courtyard. That illusion is called trompe-l'œil. It's meant to trick your eye into believing you're seeing something that you're actually not, making you feel like you're actually sitting outside under an open sky, even though you're fully indoors. There's also a heaviness in here too, because in homes like this, especially during the Victorian era, the main parlor was often where funerals were held, and this may be the very room where Adelicia's daughter Emma, the last of the Franklin children, was laid out after her death in 1855 at just 11 years old, making Adelicia suffering 6 losses out of her 10 children. I can't even imagine. And right here in the parlor, you can also see a painting of the Franklin children. Another reminder that behind all of the beauty in here, this house held some real-life moments and deep grief. And this is the formal dining room. It was actually undergoing some restoration while I was here visiting for my second time, so I'm sharing the photos from the first time I came to Belmont, when you can really see this space in all of its glory. One of the most incredible things in here is how much of Adelicia's original china still exists. During her grand tour in 1865 through 1866, she purchased an enormous formal service with over 500 pieces, monogrammed and designed to serve over 24 guests at once. It came from Escalier Cristal at the Palais Royal in Paris, which was the premier destination for fine tableware in the 19th century. So these were definitely statement pieces on their own that would be absolutely noticed in the South. These details, along with the painted ceiling here and the gilded French details throughout this room, really make you feel like you're in Europe once again, and specifically in my favorite, France. And now we're in the Stair Hall, which is a moment in and of itself. Right in the center is a portrait of Queen Victoria. Adelicia purchased it in New Orleans in 1855 for $5,000, and it hung in this exact spot until her death in 1887. A huge reminder of the time, which was the Victorian-era, when the family actually resided here. The faux marble walls are made to look real, and they almost do look real. Again, that trick of the eye that makes you do a double take. This was seen as just as good as the real thing, because in order to have artists be able to recreate materials out of something else, it really elevates the craft. This is a floating style staircase, which means it's supported in a way that makes it feel like it's suspended as it curves upward. And now we're in the principal bedroom, Adelicia's room at Belmont, which she shared with her 2 different husbands while she lived here. The walls are wrapped in this panoramic, scenic wallpaper with classical ruins, gardens, and gorgeous landscapes. I've seen a lot of these French wallpapers throughout southern homes that I've toured. This was definitely a popular style of the time, and an indication that Belmont Mansion was always keeping up and setting the trends for the Nashville area. And even though visitors wouldn't have seen this space, it shows how Adelicia truly valued good taste and style, even in her most private spaces. The furniture in here, some of it is original, but most of it is period appropriate, making you feel like you're looking at Adelicia's actual bedroom at the time during when she was actually living here. There's a painting here of Victoria Franklin, who died at just 6 years old, a quiet reminder of the pain that remains behind these walls. This is the schoolroom, but it also would have been used as a nursery when the children were younger. It does help you paint a picture of how the functions of rooms would shift as children would grow and needs of the family would change. Adelicia's children were typically taught here at home first, usually around until 11 or 12, and then they were sent to boarding school. This is the middle bedroom, and due to the proximity of the main bedroom, it was more than likely a nursery also, since children were kept close. And as they got older, this would have naturally turned into a children's bedroom. And written sources also mention 2 enslaved women, Fanny and Aggie, who provided round-the-clock care for the children here. It was common for enslaved nurses to sleep on a pallet on the floor beside the children's bed, so that they could respond to the children's needs at a moment's notice. A harsh reality that absolutely deserves a moment of pause. This is the Tête-à-Tête Room. Tête-à-Tête means head-to-head, so this is basically a private little conversation room. And this was Adelicia's reception room for calling, which was a 19th century Victorian ritual. Guests would arrive with a calling card, wait to be received, and if she didn't know you, you needed a letter of introduction from someone in her circle. The chairs and this rosewood center table are original John Henry Belter pieces. Adelicia collected his work throughout Belmont, and once you recognize that signature Rococo carving, you start spotting it everywhere. And these windows are everything. As soon as you walk in, you notice these windows. When the light hits these pieces of glass, the whole room changes. It's like a sparkling kaleidoscope. The space gets washed in jewel tones there for a moment, and it makes the whole room feel much more intimate. As we leave Belmont, I keep thinking about the kind of strength it takes to keep building a life after loss. Even after all of the loss that Adelicia suffered, she was still able to create something that left a lasting impression on the city she loved so much, a place she fought to protect, a place that survived war, and a place that still invites us in after all these years. Belmont exists because one woman refused to let her story or her home be taken from her, and Adelicia Acklen's perseverance is such a reminder that even when life feels unbearable, you must continue to press forward and create a life on your own terms. What inspires you to keep moving forward when life gets tough? And what was your favorite part of today's adventure? Let me know in the comments below. Don't forget to hit thumbs up, subscribe, and make sure to hit that notification bell so you don't miss any of the amazing house tours that I have planned for you each and every week that span across the whole country. I can't wait to share them, so make sure you don't miss out. And until our next house tour, my friends, keep enjoying the beauty of vintage home. Au revoir.